Welcome to another edition of the Spoon Mob Pod, the Chefs and Guests series. Today's podcast, we have Kevin Wang, the chef at Akatsuki. He also did the Sushi Pop in Vaso back in 2018. Akatsuki is kind of the private catering company that he founded a few years back, so he could kind of cook, and do his own thing with the sushi. He's actually going to be opening a restaurant in Cleveland in the next couple months. Be on the lookout for details as those come out. And I plan on getting him back on the podcast to kind of talk a little bit more about that concept once they've officially opened and are kind of running a good clip. The reason I reached out to Kevin, I did the Sushi Pop thing. Definitely followed him on Instagram for a while too as well. He hasn't been posting too much lately, but originally we tried to set something up through Akatsuki actually kind of over the summer of last year. And we were like at the 11th hour, and then there started to be supply chain issues with the fish. And he goes into it, but he actually had to turn down quite a bit of business, not even just from necessarily like fears of COVID, but a lot of it was also because of just lack of supply. Before his supplier, they were bringing in fish like 3-4 times a week, and then it went down to one. And so he's not like an exclusive with that supplier. So the supplier is divvying up whatever they get in to all these different chefs. Price increases, odd man out, all that stuff too. So we never were able to get that set up. It doesn't look like we'll be able to probably do it really anytime soon, just because of him opening the restaurant up in Cleveland and working up there. So basically we'll be going up to Cleveland, getting sushi with him up there once the restaurant opens. It's probably a tie between Cleveland and Detroit for kind of the next Airbnb staycation. Just right now, there's not a whole lot of restaurants open, and kind of giving us some time too as well with, Christmas and the New Year's, just because there's going to be spikes in the coronavirus cases. So want to see those go down a bit, as the vaccine gets distributed more widely and everything too as well. So things will hopefully start to look up as the weather starts to break, but hopefully a little bit sooner than that, even if, like February or something, some of these places start opening back up. That'd be really cool just to kind of experience those. But I think Cleveland and Detroit, probably the two most logical next places where, might stay in an Airbnb for a handful of days and eat at 4 or 5 different restaurants within the food scene. Louisville's, also a potential too. But yeah, Kevin goes into, we spend almost an hour and a half, and really an hour and 20 minutes, talk about a whole wide range of things, just how he got into the industry, why he became a chef, how he fell in love with sushi, interviewing at different sushi restaurants in like New York and Columbus and stuff, a whole bunch of difference, just everything. Anything you can think of, we cover a lot of it. There is stuff that we didn't get to, just we were kind of running out of time. So he, like I said, do plan on getting him back on the podcast. Got, more stuff kind of want to cover with him. And then also the new restaurant, I want to get into that too, once all those details come out. Yeah, I'll stop talking, let you guys listen to the interview. We did it over Zoom. I'm really happy with how it came out. Give it a listen. All right. Well, thanks for doing this. Appreciate you making some time and coming on the podcast here.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, one of the reasons I want to have you on, I know we've, kind of talked in the past, and we were working on setting something up, kind of ran into some supply chain issues with coronavirus and everything. So definitely still want to get together at some point in the future once all that, gets resolved and everything. But
Absolutely.
In the meantime, to have different people in the industry on the podcast and everything, felt it'd be a good time to get you on before stuff kind of starts ramping up for you again. So the first kind of thing that I wanted to touch on, there's not a whole lot of information on a lot of chefs in Columbus, just kind of lacking of general food media, a couple different outlets, but nothing super consistent. So kind of wanted to go into your career thus far. You're from Wadsworth originally, correct?
Correct.
So that's near the Akron area.
So I moved to Wadsworth first time when I was in 4th grade for half a year. I was going to Sacred Heart Middle School in Wadsworth over there. Ended up having to go back to Taiwan because my father couldn't come out because he was in the Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah. So during that time, he wasn't allowed to come out. They worry about spy issues, I guess. But military personnel, I guess, have some kind of difficulties coming out during that time.
Yeah, it depends on, I guess, probably what the year, but I know depending on sometimes with military personnel or former military personnel, just because I kind of work in the industry a bit, depends on like foreign contacts. And usually, at least as of right now, without getting too far into it, Taiwan, it's usually, if you have any known associates that are within China, essentially, so that's kind of one of our big adversaries. So sometimes, but I mean, this was years ago, so who knows? So you're originally from Taiwan then, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think I came to America the first time, it was 89 or 1990. But then, I had to go back because the previous statement. But then I came back for good in 8th grade in 1994, Christmas Eve.
And then you kind of grew up in Wadsworth. And
so I spent about 4 to 5 years in Wadsworth, going to high school there. Once graduated high school, I came to Columbus when I was 18, 19 for about a year or two, just to get the feel of the city and stuff like that. Because, my family were originally from Taipei, which is a bigger city. And Wadsworth was, it was nice. It was quiet, but it wasn't what I was used to. After I came to Columbus, I realized that, if I'm staying in Wadsworth, Columbus is where I want to be. But then I went back to Akron area. I actually lived in Cleveland for a couple of years, went to school in ITT, which is funny because they have this whole scheme going on right now for the last couple of years. But anyways, I graduated with computer animation and game art and design, and came back down to Columbus in 2004, decided to come down here because my sister was down here at the time. Yeah, I decided to move back down here to work, to save up some money to go out west because that's where all the computer stuff is at anyways. But then once, I've always been in restaurant industry since I was 14, pretty much when I moved here to the United States the second time. I worked in my aunt and uncle's restaurant, washing dishes. I don't know if I should say this, but back in the days, I was getting paid $10 a day. But family labor is always the best labor. So,
right.
Yeah, especially for a 14-year-old kid. It took me a whole week to save up enough money to buy my first Super Nintendo game. So I still have that photo, and that was a pretty proud moment in my life.
What game was it? What game did you buy?
Killer Instinct. Okay. Yeah. It was back when it first came out. So I came down here. So I looked for jobs in restaurant industries because, that's what I always been dealing with. I've always liked cooking and always liked the kitchen environment since I was in high school. Kind of want to start learning cooking back in high school when I used to watch the old Food TV network. When Emerald was a nobody that has a time slot at 11:30 at night. Okay. And yeah, he looks super, super young. And I always just watch his show and, Yang can cook. If Yang can cook, so can you. I don't know if you remember that show.
Yeah, I do. It's been so long. Me and a friend were kind of talking about Emerald because he had a little mini series come out on Amazon. But
right.
Like when he was at the height of, I don't even remember if it was the Food Network or if he was on like the cooking channel, but when it was like Emerald Live, like it was, that was like before TiVo, before DVRs, and it was like appointment viewing for a while.
Yeah, I watched him before Emerald Live. Like I said, when he was a nobody and his time slot was really crappy. When he got into Emerald Live, that's when I actually kind of stopped because I felt like it was too much of a show instead of just focus on cooking. I always liked his personality, but I think Emerald Live kind of put a magnifying glass on top of that and kind of exploded, for people it's better for viewing purposes.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. Which I completely understand. Italian cooking was one of the very first I learned how to start cooking. And then I started, follow my mom around the house, way she cooks. I learned a little bit here and there and stuff like that. When I came down here, like I said, I got a job back in, restaurant industry, and I've always been in kitchen. And we opened up Typhoon back in 2005, where I think BBR is right now.
Okay.
Shore North.
Yeah. Shore North, Park Street area. Yep.
Right. So that used to be Typhoon Asian Bistro, and I was working in the kitchen at the time, but they also had a sushi bar. And after that sushi chef left and I left there, the sushi chef ended up purchasing Sushi Co., which still exists to this day, but different owner now. Sushi Co. is in Crosswoods. One of my good friend actually owns it now, so everybody can go check him out. He ended up purchasing Sushi Co., and then he asked me if I wanted to learn sushi at the time. And at the time, granted, I grew up in Asia, the first memory I have for sushi was on, it was like top floor of this really high building. It was this really nice restaurant. You can see all around the rest, from the out, from inside, you can see the whole city. But they had sashimi where, Asia we weren't really interested in like rolls and stuff like that. So it was more
that's
focused.
An American thing.
Yeah. And I remember eating sashimi when I was maybe like 6 or 8, and I remember spitting it back out immediately because my palate wasn't developed yet, and it wasn't something that I was used to, and plus I was a kid, so I was picky.
Yeah.
But like I came back when I moved back into Columbus, and I started eating sushi here and there and stuff like that, and I fell in love with it, and I had the chance to learn the craft. And during that time, I was thinking either to learn sushi or hibachi. What led me towards sushi it might sound shallow, but during that time, I was really tired of the smoke and the grease that's in kitchen. And my whole closet would smell like fryer oil, and it's just something that you can't get out. You can get it out,
Yeah, right.
So and I always thought like, oh, sushi chefs always have it easy. They're out in the air conditioning room talking to cute girls and talking to all the servers, whereas the kitchen guys are just back there slaving away and sweating. So during that time, I was like, well, I kind of want to do sushi then. I want to look cool too, But then once I start touching sushi, I kind of fell in love with it to the point that, I realized that what I went to school for was a waste. As soon as I touched sushi, it's the simplicity of sushi and the ideas of sushi that kind of kept me in this field for as long as it has.
Being a sushi chef in Japan, there's always, the talk about it takes you basically apprentice for it's like at least 3 years before you even touch the rice.
Correct.
And then another couple years before they even let you start like doing anything with the fish.
Correct.
You didn't have to go through any of that because, you essentially got into sushi here in America where that's just not the case with the restaurants, right?
Right. I always had an appreciation for that kind of training. And I can get back into that a little bit when we talked about my last teacher, Mr. Huang. He trained me very military style and very old school way. I think it was on par with most of the Japanese training style. Is that, they really want to see if you're serious about the craft, because it is something that will take a lot out of you physically and mentally. And also they want to see if you're serious. They don't want to waste their time, nor they don't want to waste your time either.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to really just kind of jump into it and start learning sushi while I was getting paid for it, which was, almost unheard of back in the days. Whereas traditionally you would be, if you're training to be a sushi chef, you'd be in the kitchen for, like you said, 2 to 3 years, just cutting vegetables. Cutting green onions is one of the skills that, that's your knife control and that's your cuts and that's your knife work. And that's one of the things that many sushi chefs gets trained on first. And also the basic technique called katsuramuki, which is, what you see like cucumber wraps. Right. That type of knife skill is, Japanese kitchen 101 almost.
So you get into, you fall in love with sushi, and then from there, you kind of bounce all over the place, right? Like you work in different places in Columbus. You eventually go up to Cleveland too, I think, for a little while, right?
Yes, I did. There was a period of time that I didn't really do sushi. I kind of started to do serving and do front of the house. Because during that time, I realized that at some point in my life, I would like to have my own restaurant. And knowing back of the house, everything on back of the house is great, but I felt I didn't have the front of the house training just of yet. So at Sushi End, where I worked, the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Bay, were really, really nice to me. They treated me like their own son. I was serving for them for 4 years, assistant managing for 2, and general managing for 1 over there, and the other 1 year at Kojin's back in the days in Pao. like I decided that I really, really want to do front of the house stuff during that time because I was kind of tired of, I don't know how to say it, because it seems like servers make pretty decent money, right?
Yeah, because there's a lot of states that have the law where they can't, like, because of tips, can't go to the kitchen staff and everything, which is BS, but it really messes with stuff. Like, they're having problems in California.
Oh, really?
Because they raised the minimum wage, but they still can't do, the tip disbursement across, both front and back of the house. So now it's like an even greater disparity where they thought by raising the minimum wage, it will kind of, help everybody. But now it's such a drastic difference. Restaurants before the pandemic and everything, we're kind of starting to figure out how do we operate, do we just raise the rates for the kitchen staff? Then everybody in the front is dependent upon tips again. And it's kind of a weird balance.
I mean, there's many different ways because, if we go to bigger cities such as New York, I'm sure you've experienced this yourself too. When you go to nicer restaurants or especially sushi bars, on their menu, it will even say they take like an X percentage gratuity, and that's to keep the sushi chefs happy and keep them working hard and stuff like that. I know that they do that, but I didn't know what the laws are around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, each state's different, but yeah, I mean that's definitely the way to go with the whole the talk prepaid system. Is it's at least from like a guest perspective, it's just so much, I don't know, nicer. It's just you're already good going in. Like all you have to do is pay for drinks or whatever. So you do like a pairing that's included, and then when you're done, you're done, and you leave. And everybody's they usually put the gratuity already built into what you paid, and everybody's like taken care of, and everybody's good, and you don't have to worry about somebody shorting you or whatever. Right. So when you go up to Cleveland, what kind of took you up there? Why'd you decide to go up to Cleveland for a bit?
Back in the days, I've met Chris Crater from a long time ago. Him and my ex-brother-in-law were pretty good friends, and so we all actually went to the first year of Bonnaroo together. Yeah, we went there on business because my ex-brother-in-law, he used to own Higher Ground on OSU campus. So we went there to sell, pipes and stuff like that. But that's not relevant. But once we met, we kind of turned into friends, and then he opened up Harvest. And my sister was working there at the time, and my sister ended up having a party at her house in German Village, and I was doing sushi for her party. And Chris was there at the time, and Chris asked me, was like, hey, I didn't know you're doing this. Are you interested in doing something together in the future? And of course, at 27, 28, I was very eager to do so. So I told him, yeah, absolutely. But, obviously all these things take time. So we talked every so often every year. And then when the time finally came, he told me that, hey, we're opening an up Salt and Pine. We got all these chefs coming in. I kind of want that to be your stage and your platform to let the Columbus people know you a little bit. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Sign me up.
It's so crazy that didn't last longer, Salt and Pine. The amount of chefs that are still, everybody was kind of I feel like everybody who's in that kitchen is basically running their own restaurant now. It's
everybody has their own thing going on.
Make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm not gonna badmouth anybody here. So it's just ultimately the direction of the company and the way they ran things did not align with what most of the chefs were there, what they had in mind. With that being said, that's why Andrew left at first, and then I left eventually. And then that it just kind of came crumbling down after that. Right. The bad thing is that, I was really happy for the opportunity, and which I thank Chris for too during our last meeting, was that, no matter what happened during the year that I was working with you, what you said to me at the beginning was very, stuck in my head. It was kind of I was kind of offended by the statement, but the more I think about it, the more I can make sense of it, is that, I should be thankful to have a spot here to do the food that I want to do and give it to the public in Columbus. I thanked them for the opportunity, and because of Salt and Pine, I've met great people, Josiah, Andrew, Silas, everybody there. So, I still talk to every single one of them almost on the weekly basis.
That's good. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, these are really talented and really driven chefs, and that wants to elevate the food scene in Columbus for everybody, and whether it was well received or not, it matters, but to us as chefs is that, Chris really gave us a platform for us to do what we wanted to do and the way we want to do it. And, at the end of the day, I have nothing but good things to say about that.
So then you go back to Cleveland.
So when I was in Salt and Pine, I think it was a recruiter or somebody. Yeah, it was somebody that I used to work with. He had an interview there, and then he called me and told me about the position because he told me that these guys are trying to open a steakhouse / sushi bar sort of deal. And I told them about you, so you'll probably hear from them soon. I spoke with a owner there, and while I was in Columbus to talk about the job opportunities and stuff like that. So ultimately, the place is called Marble Room. What it was is just, it's a really high-end steak restaurant. They wanted to add it in raw bar and sushi bar for the space. And it used to be an old bank. So, the whole building interior is all marbles. So hence the Marble Room.
Right, yeah.
So I went up there, kind of lifted my roots, which is something that I didn't really want to do because, like I said, if I want to stay anywhere in Ohio, it would be in Columbus. But I decided that it was a good opportunity. And so my wife and I picked up everything and we kind of just moved up there. And once I was up there, because they have another project that they're also working on, because they just recently during that time purchased the Key Tower in Cleveland. So they wanted to add in a carry-out sushi place in the lobby area in Key Tower. Okay. So I had to oversee that as well, and while working on the Marble Room concept. So once I set up all the equipment list and concerns for different type of equipments and stuff like that, and to kind of organize things for them to just so we can execute smoother, they decided to do a tasting because they just got in a new general manager from Dubai. He was recently in Dubai for the last couple of years running a place. So I just made the menu item, which everybody agreed upon previously. And I didn't know it because that was the very first time that I had to do a quote unquote tasting interview. Whereas, most chefs nowadays, you go for an interview if you're looking for high-end positions, they pretty much just tell you to go in the kitchen and give you 30 minutes to create a dish. Right. Yeah. To make something and then you come out, everybody taste it. I never really had to do that ever in my life because I've always worked for mom and pop shops. And they just, especially with sushi, it's kind of just well, if you know what you're doing, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's pretty. I would imagine it's pretty easy to tell with sushi where you had to stage for 2 days or anything.
Right. So, but during that time, even the head chef over there, during that time, his name was Alberto. He's not there anymore. He moved back to New Jersey. He told me that you got to wow these people. You got to wow these people, which kind of took me by surprise because I didn't know that was what I needed to do. And so I was just making them menu items. So with that being said, that didn't really go very well. The GM ultimately just told me that, we don't really need you anymore. After we moved up there, the head chef was pretty much almost in tears when we were all talking. And because he felt really bad that me and my wife, picked up everything and moved up here. And then now you guys are after I do everything for you guys and they're telling me that, we don't need you anymore. So, that 1 year when I was up in Cleveland, because of that it hit me really hard. I never really had that kind of letdown ever in my professional life. So, it made me really start thinking what I really need to do in my career, with the experiences that I've had with, bad owners and bad bosses. And then, the industry, the way people that would treat the people that are in the industry. Even at Salt and Pine, I was kind of had this idea to create this concept I was going to call it Rogue because ultimately the concept was to gather all these, chefs that, have dreams. We all have dreams and we all want to do our own things, but most of the chefs are living paycheck to paycheck because the pay is so low. And most of us have families that we have to take care of too. So it is very, very hard for any chefs to really just say, hey, I'm going to do a pop-up. It'll probably cost me, $500 to $1,000, including space. It's hard for us to come up with that type of money, just that type of cash.
Right.
For most of us. So what I really wanted to do is to have a small restaurant, and I want to incubate the Columbus chefs. I want to bring all the chefs that has ideas, that wants to do stuff, that wants to do pop-ups. Ultimately, they can use the space for free. I want to, it still be a sushi restaurant 6 days out of the week, but on that one day, it'll be a guest chef. And I really want to create this food scene for the city of Columbus, because I think at the time when I was at Salt and Pine, that's when I really realized that, the cooking world is so much bigger out there. And I've learned so many different techniques from everybody there that I incorporated into my sushi dishes. Right. And that's what I've been trying to do, is utilizing new age techniques and cross-utilizing with, authentic techniques to make the best food there is.
So is that a concept that you still want to move forward with?
That is definitely still a concept that I still want to move forward. It doesn't end there, I want to have agriculture. I want to have farms in Columbus. I want to, raise our own cattle, raise our own things, and grow our own produce and do all this stuff. Right. Maybe help out, after school programs and stuff like that. Just to get people off the streets and get something that they can find passionate, because ultimately, cooking and making food really is what saved me, and really what made me keep pushing forward and going when I feel like I couldn't do it anymore.
Based on your time in Cleveland, would you say that, I guess, they were more, compared to Columbus, do you think more or open to or appreciative of sushi versus Columbus? Which market do you think receives sushi better? Because there's not much, we'll get into it here in a little bit, but in terms of, the food scene in Columbus, especially with sushi and everything, you really have to go to Chicago, to kind of find that, even though it's probably a bit more of a higher end experience because, they're flying ingredients in and stuff like that. But in terms of kind of the Midwest, it's just, unless you get lucky with, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he had the restaurant in Dublin for a while because of the Honda plant, and he closed it because he retired and everything. But that's just how Columbus got lucky with having. Yeah.
So the weird thing I found out is that, Columbus population is about 3 times the size of Cleveland, I believe.
Getting further.
Yeah, of course. Columbus is, within the last 5-10 years, it blew up like crazy. With a population 3 times the size of Cleveland, when I was down here doing Salt and Pine, my first master, Taishi Noma, he ended up moving to Cleveland, and he called me, I think 3-4 times the first year to tell me to go up there and work with him. So he's this old school traditional Japanese guy. The first time I met him, I thought he was in the Yakuza, because it was his day off, and he came in with, his white pants and, his shirt, his button-up polo shirt, and he has a shaved head, obviously, and he just looked very, very intimidating to me, and he kind of just looked at me like wondering, oh, who's this kid, but I didn't know he was the head chef there at the time. He was only working part-time, and later I asked him, why do you only work hourly? He said that because they can't afford him full time. So one way or the other, the first time he called me a few times, and they opened up a place called Gingko in where's that place called? I forgot what that place is called, but it's in Cleveland. It's in like a more hipster area-ish type of place. It's actually right across the street from Lola's, I think.
Oh, so Tremont.
Yeah, Tremont. Yeah. So Dante is the owner of the restaurant, and he also owned an Italian restaurant on the first floor, whereas Gingko was kind of in the basement. So it was kind of a cool feel. I remember going in there the first time with me and my wife now. We were dating at the time, and we went up there for Valentine's Day, and Noma-san really took care of us. And we, I've always enjoyed working with him. And there's one thing that I remember the most is what he told me at the very beginning after we worked together for about 6 months. You see these sushi chefs that stay at one place forever, right? Do you think it's good? And I was like, well, yeah, I think the owners like that kind of stuff, loyalty and, stability and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, but as a chef, I don't think that's a good idea. And I was like, oh, why? Because I would think, especially with Japanese people, they're really focused on loyalty and, they're focused on stability and just work ethics. Right. But the way he told me was that, as a chef that's learning the skills and the trade, you go to one sushi restaurant, especially sushi restaurant, as a sushi chef, when you go into restaurant A, you have your head chef A, right? And you learn everything from the head chef A. But what's going to happen is that at a certain point, you're going to learn everything that he has to offer you, right?
Yeah, all the little secrets and tips.
Yeah. So, and the way he put it is that what I would suggest you do, and which is what I do, is that I go to different places and I learn different operation styles, different techniques, and different ways of doing things. And after X amount of years or so, you will find your own style and you will find your own way of doing things because you already know so many different ways of doing it.
Right.
And that kind of stuck with me for even till now. And Noma-san really taught me everything as far as sushi bar etiquette goes. Whereas skill-wise, he didn't teach me a lick. Every time he's doing something, he's very secretive. He's always in the back kitchen while I'm working up front. And if I go back to the kitchen, he'll put his whole body blocking the process. So he doesn't want me to watch. He doesn't want me to see. I personally feel like he probably thinks I wasn't ready yet. So, but that never really offended me in any way possible. I remember the first time he talked to me and even showed me anything, I almost cried because the first 2 weeks we worked together, he didn't really say a word to me. He was probably just kind of feeling me out and see if I'm serious about anything, But I think it was one day I was cleaning shrimp, cooked shrimp, ebi, and he walked by, he came into work and he looked at it and he was like, why are you doing it that way? I was like, I don't know. Nobody ever showed me any other way. This is the only way I know. Yeah. And he said, okay, I'll show you. And I mean, I was tearing up at that. I was getting choked up, but I didn't want to cry in front of a 60-year-old Japanese man. So I had to swallow that pretty hard. But I was very, 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 very happy. It almost felt like one of those scenes in the animes that you see, right? When the master finally acknowledges the student, sort of deal. But yeah, so he taught me a lot of things, such as, when he asked for aniki tuna, for example. I remember the first time I was like, I don't know what that is. And he said, aniki. I was like, I don't know what that is. He said, you don't know what aniki means? I was like, no. And he said, and you call yourself a sushi chef? I was like, well, no, I'm not, but I'm learning, He was like, okay, well, in Japanese, aniki means older brother, whereas ototo means younger brother, right? Okay. So when at a sushi bar in a restaurant setting, especially sushi bar, your guests are in front of you. Right. You never say, hand me the older tuna, because that just sounds bad in front of the guest.
Yeah, it makes them think that it's bad.
Yeah, so you call it the older brother tuna, whereas the ones that just came in today or earlier will be the ototo tuna.
Okay.
And he also taught me the simple fact of sushi chefs opening cooler doors. You should just use your pinky, never use any other fingers, because as far as sushi chef goes, we don't use our pinky ever, because pinkies are never touching the food, no matter what kind of techniques you're using and no matter how you're cutting things. So when you're grabbing cooler stuff, you want to use the finger that you don't touch the food with.
Interesting.
And yeah. So and that's one of the things I held it to my heart too. And also that, how do you tell if a sushi chef is any good as soon as you sit down before you even see anything or taste anything? And what he told me was that you just look at their floors. That's it. You look at their work area. If their floor is clean and spotless, these guys are good. If they're dirty and messy, then you don't want to eat there.
Struggling.
Yeah. So then that's why, I ever since that day, I have a problem every time I see most chefs just kind of brush off the crumbs and stuff off their cutting board to the floor. Usually when this is what usually happens in kitchen. A lot of times people will just clean off the tabletop, and brush it off to the floor and sweep up later.
Right.
Whereas me and how I train people now is that, you have a trash can right there. Why can't you just, wipe everything the thing into your hand and then throw it away? It would be easier that way. You don't have to walk around in trash all day. Yeah.
You're up in Cleveland for a while, then you wind up coming back to Columbus. And, from there, you basically start this, private catering venture. What was your reason behind going that route? Was it just you were kind of tired of the restaurant scene and wanted to really do what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So the reason I came back to Columbus was obviously A, this is the city where I want to be, and B is that when I was working with Marble Room, what they told me to look at is Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse. Because they want to kind of copy, they want to kind of like copy that style of dining experience. And when I came down here, when I was still living up there, and I came down here for some reason, I forgot. I think I was looking at locations or something like that. I heard it on the radio that Jeff Ruby is hiring in Columbus. And I thought that was kind of like godsend or meant to be. So, because I felt like if I can if I can get a job with a company that you guys are trying to copy, then at least that proves to myself that I do deserve to be in this business. You know what I mean? Yeah. And maybe it's just a hiccup. Maybe I just didn't try hard enough or whatever. So I ended up going up, call up Jeff Ruby and then spoke with Andrew, which was the sushi executive during that time. And he told me that they want interview. Ultimately, it's just me making dishes and making food. So I was like, okay, I'm going to crush it this time, right? Because the last time I held back a lot. And this time I was like, well, what about all the cost and stuff? And he was like, well, you can utilize anything we have in store, but anything you want, we can just get in and we'll just pay for it. And I was like, well, okay, the way I handle fish is probably very different from how everybody else handle fish. So for me personally, I would just get the whole fish in, such as salmon. And as far as tuna goes, I want to get a loin in instead of like using your guys' saku blocks, and stuff like that, because the cuts and the way you trim things, the way you portion, it all matters, right? When it comes down to the end of it.
Right.
So he was like, okay. So I think we ended up spending like $700-800 for that interview.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I was getting, fresh wasabi roux. I was getting toro in. I was getting all kinds of crazy things in.
That's not a normal, like, is that a normal thing for a sushi chef then? Like if they're going to do an interview at a place that they would have to bring their own ingredients for the audition or?
No. So when I was working with Noma-san in Asian Gourmet in Gahanna, there was a server there. His name was Jordan, and he was going to culinary school during the time, and we became pretty good friends. After he graduated, he actually moved out of New York and started learning sushi. And so he's doing really well right now. He actually just recently moved to Atlanta and opened up to-go Sushi Concept.
Okay.
But they are opening their brick and mortar, I want to say spring of 2021. But anyways, he always tried to call me. He always called me every single time that there's an opportunity there. He wanted to get me into Ginza Onedara, which is a 3 Michelin star sushi bar in New York. And I think they have multiple locations around the world, right?
Yeah.
And also, he also called me up to go stage at Shuco in Manhattan.
Okay.
Yeah. So, during that time, I did go up to Shuco and stage for one whole day. So we got in there around 11 a.m., 10 a.m. And then I got out there at about 10 p.m. So what I had to do was just really watch how everybody worked for that day and see the flow of service. And at the end of the night, the owners just had me, Jimmy was the only one there during that time. He just had me make 5 nigiris, and that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was all was. And then, because this was like summertime, I want to say last year. Yeah, it was close. It was before summer. It was like spring. And then they wanted to, because they have a place up in Hamptons, and they want to open a sushi bar there for like every single day instead of just the weekends. So they needed a sushi chef over there to handle things.
Okay.
And they wanted to hire me there, but they also wanted me to work at Shuco on my days off or on my time off. But I asked my buddy then, I was like, well, then where am I going to sleep? If I'm working in Manhattan and
you have to go to the Hamptons like 3 days.
Yeah. And he was like, well, you can crash on my futons. I was like, dude, man, I'm 40 years old. I can't be crashing on futons anymore.
Yeah.
If I'm your age, it's a different story.
Right.
Yeah. So he was like, yeah, I understand. It's okay.
So how, when you were doing your, these different interviews, especially with Shuco, how big is there a language barrier with, Japanese versus because you're not fluent in Japanese, right?
No, I'm not.
So did you find that there was a big language barrier, or is it most of the chefs, pretty much?
No, as far as Shuco goes, the two chef owners that are working there, one is Korean, one's Chinese.
Okay, so it doesn't.
Jimmy's Korean. Both of them speak fluent English, so it was completely fine. And as far as language barrier goes, it's kind of funny because after you work in a restaurant with older Asian people that don't speak English as well as, a younger generation, you kind of just know what they're talking about, even if they're just speaking words and not complete sentences.
Because you can pick up on mannerisms and different,
Right. And that's one thing about chefs is that, you don't have to really say anything to each other. It's like in my interviews nowadays, when I interview people to come on board, I don't really care what it says on your resume, and I don't really care how well you speak and what your experiences are. I just need you to make me a plate, right? I just need you to make me, hosomaki, urumaki, roll with rainbow roll, maybe, 2 sets of sashimi and 4 pieces of nigiri. Right. And from that alone, I can just tell how good you are, because talk is cheap,
So you go, you do the interviews there, it doesn't really line up with kind of where you're at. So you wind up coming back, and you're doing the private catering, which is kind of what you're still doing, right? Obviously coronavirus put on hold.
Yep.
And then you were supposed to, I think, and I don't know if it fell through or not, but you were supposed to run a sushi bar. I think wasn't it in the Moxie Hotel?
Yeah. So it was. So I ended up getting a job with with Town Hall Company. So the Mandrake is the rooftop restaurant that they're going to be opening, and ultimately, they wanted me to run that restaurant and potentially expand later on. But that everything kind of got put on hold, obviously, due to coronavirus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, I think it was about September or something like that. After not hearing from them for a few months, and that it was about 6 months.
Yeah.
The owner, Bobby, he actually called me up and was telling me that he has a project for me and my apprentice, Daniel. So both of us went up there, and I kind of want to use the opportunity to really ask them, what your guys' plans are and how you guys are dealing with all these employees that you supposedly have for Columbus locations, but not utilizing and not paying them. And what do you want us to do, sort of deal?
Yeah.
So ultimately, we went up there. He wanted to create a sushi concept within Town Hall in Cleveland. And because of Town Hall's dietary restrictions, they're focused on non-GMO, all organic, that kind of stuff, which made my food not taste pretty much not the same and not exactly how I wanted. And so after I worked with him for about 2-3 weeks, in Cleveland, I told him that, hey, this is not for me, and I'm not going to be here forever. Because ultimately I'm supposed to just be here training some people to do sushi, but because I'm not your sushi chef here, I'm your sushi chef in Columbus. But ultimately we parted ways because I just told him that, even when we signed on board, I told him that this is the last company I'll be working with. If this doesn't work out, then I'll just be doing my own things. Yeah. And they understood that. So, we parted ways, mutually, and it was fine. There were no animosity or hard feelings on either end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as of right now, I am still working on something. Unfortunately, that something is going to require me to be in Cleveland for the first part of it, which is going to be a year or 2 years. However, it is still my goal to bring the concept back to Columbus, if not create a whole new concept in Columbus. Because I mean, I can tell you that my dream restaurant really is just a 10-seat sushi bar. Right. It's just me and then the one other person, and our kitchen equipment's behind us. It's just something really small, really quaint. But at that time, with that being said, I don't really want to worry about whether or not it's making money. As long as I can pay the bills, that's all I care about. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I think I will die behind a cutting board, and I think that's where I want to die anyways, is with a knife in my hand. But I just want to do this for the rest of my life, and I really just want to keep making sushi forever. But for me not have to worry about income and sales and stuff like that to really live my dream restaurant, which is what my first boss, Mr. and Mrs. Bay at Sushi End, told me, is that your first business should always be the moneymaker. And after, it doesn't matter if you enjoy doing it or not, just make sure it makes money. And then once that starts making money, that can be your umbrella to do whatever it is you want to do
passion
later
projects
on.
And all that
Right.
stuff.
So I'm going to take that into action and create this. There's not much I can say right now, but I can definitely announce it in about a month or a month and a half. Yeah. I spoke with my partners a couple of days ago about this. He was like, just let them know. We'll announce it in about a month and a half.
Yeah, look forward to some details and where people can find you, and then hopefully,
absolutely.
Doing, hopefully you'll be able to do, dine in kind of right off the jump, and that'll be pretty awesome. Definitely come up that way, since I do have family up there anyways. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, so that's where you're at now. But just kind of, I want to go through just to kind of circle back around on a couple things. So.
Sure.
You never went to culinary school, but you've encountered probably a lot of people that have. I guess, what would your recommendation be for any younger chef or somebody who wants to get in the profession? Would you recommend they go to culinary school, or do you feel that the in-kitchen, on-the-job training, because you're kind of self-taught to a point, like, do you think that was more beneficial for you, or would be more beneficial for a younger chef coming up now?
I think it all really depends on what type of person you are. Mm-hmm. For you to decide to want to be a chef to begin with, is that they say people learn different ways, right? One is hands-on, and one can learn by just reading and memorize everything. Whereas me, I'm more of a hands-on person. So if I do anything I learn, as soon as I write it down once, I don't forget. So I always write everything down, and I learn everything by doing. So culinary school is great as far as teaching you the proper techniques, and most importantly, teach you the organization and food costing and labor costing, that kind of stuff early. Well, whereas me, I had to learn all that later on in life, once I get to that position, and kind of figure it out on my own, or kind of ask my colleagues for opinions. However, that piece of paper is really, really nice as well. It gets you into a lot of places, right? Yeah. But as far as learning goes, I've seen, all kinds of culinary school graduates. I've seen people that really thrive afterwards and really utilize their education. And I've seen people that are super humble, but super badass in the kitchen. I've seen people that are super, egotistic, super ignorant, but can't do anything in the kitchen. Right. I've seen people that graduate a culinary degree at their top of their class, but can't handle Saturday night service.
Right.
So it's always a lot different what you learn on paper than when you really put it into action. I think we all learn at this point at 2020 is that, of all the cooking shows that we watched so far already, is that, it doesn't matter what it sounds like, doesn't matter what your menu looks like or whatever. It's about your execution, right? It's about how you execute your vision and make sure everybody's happy. Yeah. That's the most important. So, and that's one thing I always tell my trainees too, is that, it's great that you have all these great ideas, but just think about the process of how to assemble this dish when the order comes in. One at a time is okay, but what if you get 20 and then your ticket board is, completely stacked. What are you going to do then? And then you really have to start thinking outside the box a little bit and try to figure out how to do this, because not every restaurant has an avant-garde team, right? Not every restaurant is like Noma has, 20, 30 chefs. That's kind of like maybe not that many.
They got more than that.
Right.
Listen, they were saying, I think there was like a podcast or something I listened to with somebody who used to work there, and it was like they had like 70.
Oh, wow.
It was basically like two people per almost like two people per, kind of court, like, because they were only doing 15 course things. But it was so labor intensive for some of the stuff that they were doing. Like they had like 70 people.
Right. I mean, it's almost like
15 people
assembly line
all at once. Like it's insane.
Yeah. Like one person putting a leaf on a plate and then pass it down,
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I can have that in my restaurant too, but I don't print money for a living, so I can't do that.
Right.
So, and that's one of the things that, I think a lot of the guests really needs to understand is that, when you go to restaurants and dine, you can get sushi anywhere, or you can get, let's say, steak anywhere. But it's about, or you can get like tuna tartare anywhere, but it's about the presentation. It's about the labors that's behind all this stuff that's really coming on to your menu price. Right.
And ingredients.
Yeah, ingredients, of course.
That's something that most people don't understand is like true food costs per ingredients. And like, because people think, well, if, I go to McDonald's, like I can get dinner for under $10. Yeah, but like that's not exactly food.
I can also eat dirt for free, and that's probably healthier than McDonald's. But, it's just what you want to eat.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of female, sushi chefs, and a lot of that, with the Japanese culture, gender roles in Japanese society, work hours, work conditions. There's kind of slowly, I guess there's, a few more that are coming up. Is that something that you think will probably take off here in America first? Like you'll start to kind of see a wave of female sushi chefs?
I'm hoping, because I've told my wife many times about this too. And I always told my apprentice and people that I work with about this too, every single time, is that I really would like to train a female sushi chef. If there's a sushi restaurant in Columbus, Ohio that, has a female sushi chef that's not bad looking, and that knows exactly what they're doing. I mean, honestly, I will probably eat there at least twice a week, because it's just something that's not seen as a norm. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Old Boy, the original version.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the daughter in the movie, she was doing sushi, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And ever since that movie, I was like, oh man, I want to be a female sushi chef, and there are definitely female sushi chefs out there right now. And I know there's one really famous one out in California, I'm hoping that will become a thing, because I mean the biggest thing with sushi chefs really is it's very, very, very labor intensive and time intensive. You're there at the crack of dawn and you're leaving when the sun's almost coming up. So ultimately that sushi literally just becomes your life, whereas, the whole the documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi, like when he first started and when his son were kids, they were scared one day because they thought there was a stranger sleeping with mom. Because they never see Jiro, because Jiro's always working.
Always working, yeah.
Yeah, and that's no joke. And even more so in Japan, where the sushi chef has to wake up, 2-3 o'clock in the morning to go to fish market to pick up stuff, and then go back to the restaurant and prep. Whereas here we have the luxury of people delivering it to us. Yeah. Now don't get me wrong. If I lived by the ocean, I would definitely go to the port every single day morning too, to pick out my own stuff too. But with being in Ohio, it's a little bit harder.
Did you ever consider going overseas or going anywhere else, when you were coming up as a chef, or you just always wanted to stay in Ohio?
So it might sound cheesy, but it's just, I've learned everything I learned in Ohio, in Columbus. I grew up as a chef and as a person in Columbus. And I mean, yeah, I was in Wadsworth or the North for a few years, but, teenage years, whatever, high school years is just for fun.
Right.
I really learned the way of the world or whatever, however you want to put it in Columbus, Ohio. And I've met a lot of good people in Columbus, Ohio. So I've always was very determined to stay in Columbus, Ohio. Like I said, if I were to stay in Ohio. However, I did have opportunities to go back to Taiwan to open up restaurants. I decided that wasn't the best move for me just yet, because during that time I wasn't, as far as skill goes, I wasn't at the same level that I am now. After I met Mr. Wang at Sushi End, he taught me pretty much a lot of the skills that I have now. And after that, becoming a head sushi chef, I had to utilize, media sources, YouTube, right. Google's, whatever. So, that's one thing I always tell all the young people that wants to be a chef and wants to learn new things. It doesn't matter how bad you want to learn it. You just go learn it, because nowadays you really have no excuse. You can learn anything that you want just by watching videos and practice.
It's all on YouTube.
Yeah, and that's all you really need to do. You'd be amazed. Like Mr. Huang showed me 5 different ways to cut salmon. I settled on one. And then now I cut salmon one way, I cut smaller fish the other way. I skin fish different ways depending on the fish. And this is all just from practicing and watching videos.
Yeah.
It's like what Noma-san said before. Once you learn so many ways, you will find your own way. Yeah. And yeah, I still, honestly, my wife and I still haven't gone on our honeymoon yet, and we've been married for 4 years now. So we were supposed to go this year, but this whole thing happened.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try to go to Japan next summer.
Oh, nice. So
hopefully
Tokyo or Kyoto.
So I honestly, I want to go to Tokyo. I want to go to Kyoto, Osaka. I want to go to all these places, but she told me just no. She said pick 1 or 2 places. That's it.
Okay.
Because I want to go to different regions and try different types of cuisine. I want to go to Hokkaido to try their seafood and milk. I want to go to Osaka to try their more Americanized the pancake things.
Oh, I know what you're. Yeah.
Nomoyaki.
Yep.
Yeah, nomoyaki. So I want to try that. I want to try so many different things in Japan. I want to try yakitoris in Japan. There is actually a good story on yakitori. It was I was still in Taiwan. I think I was like 7 or 8. This yakitori bar opened in Taipei, and my mom decided to take me there, and it was pretty high. Like Japanese food is considered pretty expensive.
Yeah.
During that time, and I think it still does. But we went in there, we order, because it was yakitori, so you just order until you can keep ordering until you're full. And I think at the end of the meal, my mom told me to sit here for 30 minutes. And she was going to be right back. And I asked her why. She said she didn't bring enough cash because I ate too much. So she was like, either you can start washing dishes or I can go get some cash. So I just sat there for 30 minutes waiting for my mom to come back to bail me out. But yeah, like yakitori bar is really something that I really want to bring to Columbus as well. I really want to have an izakaya in Columbus. And I think the Columbus general public would really, really embrace that concept.
Yeah, I mean, we went to one in Nashville. It was the first one that they ever had. It's called 210 Jack, and it's a popular spot with folks, at least within the industry too, as well, on like Sunday, Monday nights. So
yeah, their food looks great.
I think Columbus can definitely support. I think
I agree.
Izakaya bar.
Mm-hmm, I agree.
And I know we're kind of pushing on time here a little bit, so. In your opinion, I guess, what's the best sushi spot, that's not the one that you're working on in Columbus or even in just, Ohio? I mean, there's, a notable place in Cincinnati. I haven't been there to try it.
What's the place in Cincy?
It's actually technically in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name. I'll find the name.
Once you find out, let me know. Maybe I'll go check it out.
But I guess what would you recommend to people looking for, like myself, who are looking for a good sushi spot, in Columbus or, just Ohio in general?
I mean, like I haven't been to every city in Ohio, so I can't really say that there's no good sushi in Ohio. I mean, as far as Columbus goes, a lot of, it's the one thing I always tell my customers is that, yeah, I used to believe in authenticity. I used to believe in traditional techniques and stuff like that, Edomai style sushi. And I held myself pretty high up there because I felt like I didn't want to do California rolls anymore. I don't want to make, rainbow rolls anymore. I just want to make real sushi. Yeah. But at the end of the day is that it's what you got to know your audience, right? So at the end of the day, because people always ask me too, is like, what's the right way of eating this? And I always tell them, it's your food. You pay for it. You can eat it however you want. You can break it all apart if you like. you can, put your wasabi in your soy sauce and put ginger on it if you want. Whatever tastes good to you, eat it your way. But traditionally, it's eaten a certain way. Right. And I educate them the right way to do so. However, as far as what sushi restaurants that my wife and I go to, honestly, man, we don't. And I'm not saying that. That's not saying that there's no good sushi bars.
I need something, man.
I can't, man. I mean, maybe
right now. I need something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Sushi End. If Mr. Wang is working, he should be the head chef if he's still there. But just sit in front of him. He knows what he's doing. He taught me a lot of stuff. And one thing, there's one point that I really want to bring up is that, the biggest reason for me to really want to do my private dining and really push towards opening my own place and elevate the sushi game in Columbus even more so than before was a restaurant that I went to interview at. I will not name names here, but I went to interview for the restaurant. I know what you're
talking about because you told me this story.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah, I'll tell your.
I won't mention the name either. I won't mention the name.
Yeah. So, when I went into the interview, they asked me to make a rainbow roll, 2 nigiris, 3-piece sashimi, hosomaki and urumaki, right? The head chef was there at the time. Rainbow rolls, you need fish for toppings. So I asked the head chef for a piece of it, for, fish to put on top. And he handed me, this thing, well, they call it red snapper, but just so everybody out there knows, when you go out to Columbus to eat sushi, never, ever, ever order the red snapper because it is not snapper. It is frozen tilapia fillets they're feeding you. Don't eat that. That is not red snapper. Red snapper does not cost $2.75 a piece. It costs a lot more than that. But anyways, so usually when you cut fish, at the end of it, you have a triangular piece. Right. And what sushi chefs usually do, they will kind of butterfly that in half, and then so you can lay it on top of a roll easier. Whereas the chef kind of just look at the fish, put it on the cutting board, and pound his fist onto it and made it flat. Right then, I knew I didn't want to work there. It doesn't matter how much they were paying me. I just don't want to work in a spot that doesn't appreciate and respect their ingredients like that.
Yeah, taking shortcuts.
Right. So after I did that, I spoke with the owner and they were like, oh, do you have any questions or stuff like that? I was like, yeah, I actually just have one question, which has been bothering me. He was like, okay, what's up? And I was like, yeah, so I know you guys were originally from New York and all you guys came from New York. I was just really surprised because, New York seems to be like the food hub. There's so many good sushi restaurants in New York. So for any aspiring chef or aspiring sushi restaurant owner, I would think you want to be established in a city that's known for their sushi, as far as America goes. And what he told me ultimately just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, very much so, is that the New York standards were too high. So that's why we decided to come to Columbus. So what that meant to me is that you think Columbus eaters do not have standards as far as sushi goes.
Right.
And you think Columbus people are just country folks and don't know any better, and you can just sell them whatever you want and call it sushi, which is everything that I've been working against for the last 5 years. Yeah. So once he said that, I told him, I was like, okay, well, thank you for the opportunity, but I don't think I'll be working here. And that's when I really push forward to open up my Akatsuki sushi private dining experience.
Are you still doing the private dining stuff too? Even
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Just so people know.
Unfortunately, I had to turn down a lot of gigs, especially these couple months, because the holiday season. I think everybody kind of want to have a little gathering and get together at their house, which I completely understand. However, it's just like we previously talked about, is the whole coronavirus thing. Whereas my distributor used to be able to give 3 to 4 shipments from Japan every single week, whereas now they sometimes don't even get 1 a week. And with my ingredients and stuff like that, I don't buy frozen products. I don't use frozen products. Everything is fresh. And a lot of the specialty order fish that I have to get, they're all from Japan. So with that being said, it's impossible for me to really work with this at all, because it comes down to the order guy too, which he tells me that guy's terrible. He's lazy. He doesn't really want to do anything. So ultimately, I can't get what I need because of this one person, or just because of coronavirus.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap up here because probably keeping you a little bit longer. We got 8 questions, pretty much ask everybody who comes on the podcast here. So who would you say the biggest influence on your career is?
I will have to say my last teacher, Mr. Huang. I think because the way I work with him, I've only worked with him for 1.5 years, but out of that 1.5 years, I think for a whole year, I dream about him every single night, just him yelling at me. And I tell him this every single day. The very next day I go back to work and he always laugh. Ever since I left Sushi End and left under his wings, the first head chef gig that I had, I always felt him staring at me and making sure I was doing things correctly. And there's something to say about that, to be said about that. It's just nobody ever has given me that type of focus and training than him. And for me to be still seeing his shadows right next to me every time I do sushi, I think that will have to count as the biggest influence.
What is the one item in the kitchen that you can't live without? Can't be a knife.
Can't be a knife?
No, can't be a knife.
Everybody
loves knives, so it's.
My awesome my sushi cutting board. Okay. Yeah, because I even use that at home too. So.
What's a Columbus restaurant that you'd recommend that's not your own? I mean, I know you're going up to Cleveland, but
I would recommend. It's not a restaurant, but it's a private dining club. I would recommend Roy's Ave Supper Club, and it's ran by my friend Andrew Smith. So everybody should definitely check him out.
What's one spot in Cleveland since you're going up there?
Pho Lee, in this broken down Chinatown in the middle of this broken down Chinese shopping center.
It's called Pho Lee?
Called Pho Lee. It is the best pho that you can find, that I found so far between Columbus and Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bucket list travel destination, I think that's probably Japan for you, right?
Yeah, I kind of want to hit all Asia though. Korea, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam. For some reason, I really want to go to Scotland and Ireland too. I've only seen pictures, and I kind of just want to visit the scenery.
What's like the restaurant that you're looking, most forward to for your upcoming trip to Japan there?
I think it's just any sushi restaurants that I go. I kind of want to get in with Jiro's restaurant too, but I think it's a little too late. I kind of want to see what quote unquote real sushi tastes like. Yeah.
That's definitely something that's going to be pretty awesome. So, what's the craziest thing you've seen happen in a restaurant while you're working?
for safer work, or
no, just you're in the restaurant, you're in the kitchen, and then it was just a wild.
I'll just say from my personal experience. I won't throw anybody under the bus here. I'll just say what happened to me then. It was when I was working at Sushi End under Mr. Huang. It was a Saturday night, 7:30, 8 o'clock. We were getting super busy. I just got done with an order. I turned and I accidentally hit my knife. So my knife started falling onto the floor, but unfortunately it hit my leg. So it went into my thigh and it fell out. Mr. Huang looked at me and asked me if I was okay. And I told him, yeah, it's fine. I think it was the adrenaline that was going because I was slammed. So I didn't really feel anything then. But, within 5 minutes later, after, I took the knife back to the kitchen and I got a new knife, I started feeling my legs start getting wet. So So I told Mr. Wang, I was like, hey, my leg's a little wet and I don't know why. I think I need to go check it out. So my friend, which was the owner at that time, Diana, she went to the back and I was in the back and I had to like pull my pants down so she can look at it. And ultimately there was just a chunk of flesh missing. Mm. And what we did was she just kind of kneeled down and patched me up. She put, bandage around it. And I went back to work, and that was it.
Did you have to get stitches after?
No stitches. So later that night, I went back home. That was when both my parents were still here. They came to visit me. And so, I told them, hey, I got this wound. I think we need to take care of it. My dad took a look at it. And so I was sitting on my computer chair while my dad was sitting on another chair. And then as soon as I pulled down my pants and I saw the wound, I guess I passed out. Because my girlfriend, at the time, my wife now was there too. What happened was like, I guess I pulled down my pants and then I kind of woke up and I saw my wife crying and my dad was about to cry. They were like, yeah, you just blacked out. We thought you died. I was like, that would be the weakest way to go, man. It's just like dying from passing out. But ultimately we put a like artificial, they have this thing called like AI, like artificial skin or something like that. But it's pretty amazing. So you just put the whole pad over it and it's waterproof and eventually it'll suck out all the bacteria and you just change that every so often. And then it just healed up. And I still have a wound. I still have a scar from it, but that's about it.
Right. Yeah. What's your food or drink guilty pleasure? Can be alcohol, doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I don't drink. So there goes that.
A lot of chefs don't. So that's why I throw that in there.
My guilty pleasure is eating late. I think that's my biggest downfall. Because as chefs, we, our adrenaline is usually pumping until like 12:30, 1 o'clock. Yeah. So when we get home, and that's usually what time we eat dinner as well. Not too many chefs, because when you guys are eating, we're working. So, right. Those pictures that everybody's been posting nowadays that a chef eating out of a pot, squatting down. It's actually kind of funny because when I worked at Salt and Pine, I had a picture of me. It was just me eating straight out of the pot, sitting on a crate, So it's true. And so like even now after almost a whole year of quarantine and just staying indoors, I still have problem going to sleep early. I still can't go to bed before 1 or 2 o'clock. What I told my wife is that I don't want to get used to going to bed like you do, like at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And then once I have to start working, then I'm not going to have energy for that.
Right.
But that leads to the problem of me eating like right before I go to sleep or just snacking on things while I'm watching TV. And that's my biggest issue. I know if I cut that out of my life, I can lose like 30 pounds, but hey, man.
Speaking to everybody right now because of coronavirus. It's like,
right.
It does. But yeah, I mean, some people are just wired differently. Like my wife, she'll have nights when she's doing some work stuff and she can just roll till she's like, I think I work better like if I'm working like really late at night.
Yeah, that's how I am.
What's the one thing like that you've ever cooked, created, like the favorite thing so far that the favorite dish that you've ever made so far?
I think during Salt and Pine years, I think the hamachi tataki that I did, I was really proud of that. Mm-hmm. I utilized a lot of techniques that I learned from different masters and also from self-study to create that dish. The miso ponzu was on point. I remember the first time I gave that dish to Chef Andrew when we were both at Salt and Pine. He ate the whole plate and then he picked up the bowl and drank the sauce, and that to me, I almost cried also again, and because to me, like, he's kind of like this, kind of more well-known chef in Columbus, and for him to really appreciate the food that I make for the very first time, that really, really put me in a good place. So I would think that dish is definitely something that I'm very proud of.
Final question here. What's your favorite Anthony Bourdain episode? Could be a moment, scene from the show. We do a podcast here that we just kind of rewatch. We're rewatching the parts unknown episodes and kind of doing a podcast with them. So what's your favorite memory?
I think my favorite memory is just him as a person and as a professional, really. It's not really any special moments. I mean, of course, when he visits Taiwan, I watch the episodes many, many, many times, just because I'm familiar with the food and I enjoy it. but the way Anthony Bourdain approached Asian cuisines, especially with sushi, I feel like there's really nobody else in the United States. Anybody can thank them more than Anthony Bourdain to really broaden the horizon of American sushi consumers. I mean, him himself, like sushi is his last meal, like he always said. But at the same time, it's just, like after people seeing these things and with Jiro Dreams of Sushi documentary coming out on theaters, people really, really starting to understand. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing that I really felt America was missing is really an understanding and appreciation towards the craft. And Anthony Bourdain brought that to every aspect of it. It's not just Japanese food, but every type of food.
Really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Where can people find you? Social media, website?
Oh, it's a long one.
So
the Instagram account, it's Akatsuki Sushi. It is AKATSUKI. _ sushi. I would just say that would be the only one as of right now.
Right.
We will have, in about a month or so, I will announce other social media platforms and other websites that you guys can find me at.
Cool. Well, yeah, let me know when you get closer and you can talk about that. Love to have you come on and pitch the concept too again, and appreciate your time. This was awesome. We'll do it again. Good luck with the restaurant in Cleveland.
Thank you.
Talking soon, and have a good new year.
You as well, right? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
And that was my interview with Kevin Wang, again, chef of Akatsuki, also opening a yet-to-be-announced named restaurant in Cleveland. So we'll have more on that. Like I've kind of said, plan on getting him back on the podcast and covering the concept and the reason and all that stuff for that restaurant in Cleveland. And do plan on going up there myself and grabbing a meal. Once again, thank you to Kevin for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. It was cool to just be able to kind of nerd out and talk sushi for a while. It's just something that there's not a whole lot of people I feel like I can talk with about it. A lot of people think sushi is just, straight raw fish, and there's a lot more art that goes into it and a lot more preparation and technique than people probably understand. So it's nice to kind of have a conversation, with somebody who's on that similar wavelength. But yeah, make sure you give him a follow. Akatsuki on Instagram. You can find him there. More details will come out about the Cleveland thing. Make sure to check out, the different courses that I've had at the Sushi Pop that I went to. Those are all on his page on the Spoon Mob website. Make sure to follow along on the podcast. Subscribe to the feed. Subscribe to our Instagram. Make sure you're following along with that too. Appreciate everybody listening, spreading the word, getting 2021 started off right here. And there'll be more chefs coming in the future weeks. And like I said, this is something we want to continue doing right now, kind of targeting like every other week, dropping one of these. Might get a little bit more frequent, might eventually shift to Mondays, in the summer once we kind of wrap up the restaurant reviews and stuff like that. But for now, it'll be Thursdays, kind of every other week or so. We'll be trying to tie in kind of the Monday podcast with whatever chef we're interviewing that's coming out on Thursday. So there'll be kind of some teasing and lead in there. But like I said, appreciate everybody. I really enjoyed doing this, and there'll be more in the future. And stay safe out there. We'll talk to you guys next week.